So I feel the way that what spoke to me about this passage that we have here today is about the whole Christmas story not really being how really any of the people involved in the story, how they'd envisaged it going. It wasn't really what people had planned. It might not have been what we would have planned if we had been there. And it fits so well with all of the surprises that we face in life. Every day, I think every day, all of us would have something that we didn't expect that would happen that day. One way or another, there would be some kind of surprise that we find in our lives. So I didn't expect to receive a chicken dinner this morning. I've been offered, I was walking along the road the other day, and two lads came up to me, just walking down Cecil Road, and somebody offered me a drink. Don't know what sort of a drink it was, but I said, I'm okay, thank you. I have been offered other things in Erdington on street corners as well before, and I declined. And there's quite a lot of it about. But one of the biggest surprises that I had this week involves somebody from our church, because I receive all sorts of messages from people all the time about, oh, have you seen this on Facebook, or have you seen this, things that people want to share, things that do the rounds. And I got one that came through from somebody in a WhatsApp message showing me this link to a newspaper article regarding somebody in our church. Has anybody else seen this? I think some of you know what I'm talking about. Yeah? And that person is sitting here. We have a global superstar in our midst. Mrs. Violet Allison is a global superstar, because what that newspaper article, one of many, said, this one I think was in the Washington Post that I was sent, but I've since seen Australia Times, the India Times, the Daily Mail, and quite a few others as well, and on the TV and all sorts of things. So, Violet, are you able just to stand up a moment? Can we just wait, everybody, and let's give Violet a round of applause. Something quite surprising. So that was a surprise to me, but I think it was probably an even bigger surprise to Violet. Yes? So you were on an aeroplane. Yes? You just boarded on an aeroplane. You were going from where?
Yes, I went to spend Thanksgiving with my daughter in America. And then when I was coming back, I was a little bit tired. I don't know if they noticed, but someone on the plane probably noticed. When I had my seat and all settled, a lovely young man come up to me and asked me, he said, how would you like to travel first class? You can have my seat. I said, you're joking. This is something I would always want to know what happened upstairs there, you know. And then he said, where is your stuff? He started looking for my things, taking them. And he take my coat down. He said, is this yours? I said, yes. And he said, all right, come on. We go upstairs. I'm going to let you travel first class and experience what it is up there. And I went with him. And believe me, I couldn't believe what I was seeing up there. I was well looked after for the night and had all the goodies. They put me in bed. And yes, I was all looked after for the night. And believe.
And now you've got a taste for the good life now.
Oh, yeah.
You're going back again?
Yes, I understand. They'll be flying me again, first class to America. So I'll be enjoying that again.
And that's for some media appointments that you have out there, is that right? Some interviews on some TV and things?
All over.
We're talking a world tour. Thank you.
The most thing that I was happy about is I have my children, and I always said to the boys, when you see an old person traveling, an old lady, and if she needs help, help her. And when I see what happened to me the other day, I just couldn't believe, because this young man had really let me feel good. And yes.
Amen. Thank you, Violet. Thank you. Yes. So yeah, I saw this in the Washington Post. It's in all sorts. You just Google Violet Allison and you'll just see. But I'll send it. We'll get the link out there for everybody to be able to see. It's going to be in the magazine as well. So I just a wonderful thing. It's just kind of a small thing that this guy has done in many ways, but that could make such a difference, such a pleasant surprise. And then I think the way that it is spread is that the cabin crew were so taken by how lovely Violet was about it, and also just what a lovely, sweet thing it was that this man did. And it's just one of those things that got on Facebook. One of the cabin crew shared it, and then the way it goes. Yeah. So some good news that we are a part of. A pleasant surprise, an exciting surprise. Life is full of surprises for us. Some of them might not be quite as big as that, but all sorts of things come up. And as those surprises come up for us, there might be good things, and so Violet's got something good to share about that. And people could see in Violet that she was she is a lovely person, and a good person, and something of that came through in how she was, rather than kind of just, yes, I've got a right to be up here, and whilst you're here, you get me this and get me that. It wasn't like that at all. It was making the most of that opportunity, that unexpected opportunity that wasn't in Violet's plan. And so with us, our walk of faith might not be what we have in mind always. Might not be where we are now. Might not be where we thought we would be 10, 20, 30, however many years you've got before. We might have thought we'd be doing something much more exciting, much more glamorous, that God had these amazing plans for us. And here you are here. But this is exciting and glamorous too. But it might be also that we thought we would never set foot in a church. 20 years ago we were just out partying. I'm trying not to look at anybody in particular. 20 years ago we were just out partying and doing stuff. But our lives have changed. Our lives have transformed now. Or we're in that process of transformation. And so with this Christmas story, and just to run through some of the things that we have in that reading in itself, but just things that happened before that. So first of all, we have this poor innocent young woman. Well, a teenager. Probably in her mid-teens, Mary, suddenly just minding her own business. And then the angel Gabriel comes and tells her, highly favored one, you're going to have a baby. Oh, right, okay. So a bit of a surprise for Mary, really, and in her circumstances, quite a surprise altogether. Then she goes and visits her cousin, Elizabeth, who also has such a surprise that her husband is speechless as a result of it, because he kind of just can't handle it at all when he gets the news. And so he doesn't get to speak then until the baby is born. So, and Elizabeth is really old. And then unexpected for Joseph, that his betrothed Mary, he's ready to kind of do a quiet, honourable thing. So not to have her stoned, which he probably could have done under the law at that time, but just to deal with it in a certain way. But then the angel comes and talks to him in a dream, or God speaks to him through a dream, and it changes what his plan is. A surprising thing for him. He might have anticipated for a little while that they were going to have to travel to Bethlehem because of the census that had been announced. So maybe less of a surprise for them, but maybe a bit of a surprising disappointment that they couldn't really find somewhere proper for them to be, that they had a bit of a make-do situation when they get to Bethlehem. I don't think it's necessarily the case that they were going around knocking on all of the innkeepers' doors like we get in nativity plays, but certainly that it was not really the ideal circumstances for them, as the baby, the scripture tells us, was laid in a manger because there was no room in the inn. And then the shepherds, minding their own business, up on the hillside, just doing what shepherds do, out on their own, because nobody much wanted to deal with those stinky outsiders who were the shepherds, who were kind of really looked down upon by the rest of society. And then suddenly this whole army, this whole choir of angels, forget the hallelujah chorus, forget the biggest flash mob, forget almost the number of people that will be out at Six Ways Island singing on Christmas Eve from this church. But we're talking, they had the advantage of being up in the sky and all the light and everything. Well, God's glory singing over these shepherds. I don't suppose that's what they thought that they would be getting that particular evening when the angels came and told them about this good news. And then maybe what they went and they found, something so humble, something so quiet, maybe quiet, newborn baby, maybe not. Depends how you catch them, doesn't it? When they find Jesus. And then finally, skipping ahead to what Matthew tells us in his gospel about the magi who come, the wise men, the wise people, who come following this new star that they've seen, who go to the wrong place. They go to see King Herod because they assume that this new king will be in the palace. So they're surprised as to where the actual location is and who the actual new baby is. We have a story that is full of surprises from start to finish as God surprises earth with heaven. I met somebody this week as well who had some surprises that were happening to him. Just wondering about my chicken dinner, actually, whether I ought to give it to him. Anyway, this person that I met with this week, haven't seen him for a while. He'd been doing all right, and then he started going through some bad times, and his business was starting to go a little bit downhill. Work had dried up. I think he'd kind of finished a relationship a little while ago. He's a man in his mid-30s. He's kind of bright, intelligent person with kind of bit of get up and go to him. But some of that had seemed to have got up and gone, it would seem, because various things were happening to him. He suffered a really major bereavement as well not too long ago. And the flat that he was staying in, he'd fallen behind with 1 month's rent, and the landlord said they were coming back from Spain to reclaim their flat. He had to move out. So he's pretty much homeless. Okay, he was looking for somewhere. I think somebody's taking him in the next couple of weeks, a family friend. So that's good. But he told me that about a week ago, just over a week ago, that he felt he'd hit rock bottom. He'd hit rock bottom. He's a gardener, and he'd done this comedy thing. Not funny in his instance, but if you've ever seen the episode of The Simpsons where Sideshow Bob does this kind of thing, you might know what I mean. He's a gardener. He stepped back to step onto a rake, okay? And the rake boinged up, hit his back pocket, smashed his work phone, okay? So that happened sort of 3 weeks ago. He'd also broken, he had no phone otherwise. For those of you that don't do mobile phones, you'd be thinking, what's the problem? Okay. But if you're using it as your lifeline for business and just for support, then this was kind of the ultimate thing. He broke both of his phones in quite surprising, disappointing ways. And he hit rock bottom. Didn't know what he was going to do. Couldn't contact lots of his family because he had no phone. Couldn't kind of keep them up to date with what was happening. He had a little bit of money left, so he went to Aldi and he bought a chicken and some stuff, and he thought that chicken will last me a few days. So he got back to his flat, prepped all the chicken up all nice, got it ready to go in the oven, and then the electricity went. And so then he thought, oh. So then he went to the corner shop. And when he was at the corner shop, he bumped into a friend of his, and his friend said, oh, I was just thinking about you. There was something in my spirit that I needed to be seeing you. And he met this friend, and he told him why he was there. He was buying some electricity, and so his friend paid for that, bought him some other things, and said, oh, come to our church on Sunday. Be good to see you. So he got his electricity, cooked his chicken Sunday morning. That thing, somebody's invited you to church. I'm sure lots of us have been there, and you think, did he really want me to come? Do I, don't I? They'll all guess that I'm a bit down on my luck at the moment. I'm not sure if they really want me to come to church, and don't sure how I'll feel when I go there. I haven't been to that particular church for a long time. So about an hour late, he got there to church. Okay. Different service style from ours, so it was okay. Service was still running, okay? And still got there in time for the word, and he sat, it's kind of probably, church is about half this size. He sat here on about the third row, okay? And the preacher was giving the word, and my friend sat there and said, it's one of those times when every single thing that man was saying, it's like he was saying it direct to me. He wasn't looking at me, but it was like he was saying it direct to me. And after a while, he said, I began to weep. After a while, I couldn't control those tears. kind of pulled it together, and then there was a bit of singing, and then there was a bit of a time of prayer, and then it hit me again, and I began to cry, and I didn't think other people could see that I was crying, and then one of the deacons came and asked me how I was, and took me to one side, and then people prayed for me, and they were really lovely with me, and I've got that deacon's number now. And then my friend came, and the pastor came, and the pastor told me that afterwards, he said that I didn't like to say, but I felt that what I was saying, that there was somebody here, that was you that I was preaching to. I'm hoping and praying, I'm going to check with him later, that he's back at that place now. But then what happened is he met with his friend who he met at the corner shop 2 or 3 times after that. It was then the next day, and he said, I've had good, godly conversations with so many people since then. People that had been in touch. I think he might even have included the one that he had with me. And then on the Monday, after the Sunday, he got a phone call from an old friend saying, we've heard about your situation. My mum says, do you want to come and live with us? Okay, and this was somebody kind of the closest he could get to a parent, okay, who was available for him and to him. And so it looked like things were starting to happen. Then his sister got in touch with him. Oh, I've heard about your situation. What about this? What about that? We can help you with this. We can help you with this. And then the next day he came to see me. I'm not sure how much help I was as such, but I think I'm part of the process. One thing after another, and then he'd applied for a job at Aldi. I'm not sponsored by Aldi today, but then he'd been offered a job. He got to like the 4th stage of the Aldi interview process, and he'd just been for that 4th and final interview. He hoped the day that he saw me. It seemed like things were beginning to happen for him. And he used the word, I was so surprised about all these things that kept happening. I was so surprised by the bad thing, summed up for him by when he stepped back on the rake and it hit his back pocket and smashed his phone. And then so surprised by all those things that God was doing, all those people that God was bringing to me, was helping me to meet with, to help me deal with my situation. I don't believe, he didn't say to me, I prayed about this happening or that happening. He might have prayed, I'm sure he prayed that God would sort this situation out for him, but I don't suppose, he didn't say, because do you know what, I'd specifically prayed that my electricity would go whilst I was cooking my chicken and then I'd meet my friend in the shop and then this would happen. No, God just unfolded those things. Some of them in a way where we just think, wow, how did that even happen? And some things where we just know that if we're being faithful to what God needs us to do, then we will respond in certain ways to that person. So my question for us today is, how are we going to respond to the unexpected things that God does in our lives? How are we going to respond? Whether we're people that are needing to trust, like this friend of mine, needing to trust that God will continue to surprise us in good ways, even though we've had some really unpleasant surprises, some shocks along the way, some disappointments. How are we going to stick with it to know that when those surprising things happen, that God is in there with us, helping us to get through it? Because, sometimes when those surprising things happen, just like Mary and Joseph, we just have to knuckle down and get on with it. We have no choice. Yeah, I'm not going to embarrass them, but it's a phrase that somebody here in this church uses, and some of us will have heard it before, where somebody says there's something bad happening, and then they just say options nil. I just have to keep on going. We just have to keep on being faithful in what we're doing. Or we just have to adapt when those surprising things happen. And so, might it be economizing? It might be just changing what we do or how we do something in the way that Joseph has to adapt what his approach is. Or it might be that the surprising thing is so good and so amazing that we have to take that opportunity, just like the shepherds do on the hillside, rather than thinking, nah, you're not angels. Or when the angels have gone, thinking, I didn't see anything, did you? No, I think there's something up with this coffee we're drinking. Or shouldn't have brought that thing on the corner of in Erdington. Or could dismiss it in any kind of a way. Or do you think they were telling the truth? No, they went with the opportunity. The opportunity, God laid this opportunity before them, this glorious opportunity, and they responded. They did something about it. Or we have to trust. We just have to trust that when these surprising things happen, just as Mary trusts in what her response is, that we have to also be people who say, let it be. That I will go with what you are saying. I will follow. I will trust. Or just like the Magi who think they're looking for one thing and then they find it somewhere else. Maybe we just have to sometimes acknowledge that what we were looking for in the first place or hoping for from God is not actually the thing that God was going to show us. And so the surprising thing is actually, the answer is somewhere else. Or the answer is somebody else. Well, sometimes we have to accept that despite our efforts to avoid and evade him, surely none of us do that, do we? That God sometimes corners us in a good way or turns us around. Think Jonah ending up in the belly of the whale, ending up where it is that God needed to send him in the first place. So how do we respond to those unexpected things that come our way? So as we think about the Christmas story, as we think about all those things that happen to the different characters, the different people who play their part in this story of salvation that we celebrate this Christmas time, every Christmas time, what's our response going to be? How can we learn from those people? Because their experience is there for us to learn from. So whether we're kind of on the good side of surprises, where we can be part of a surprising response, where we were thinking, I didn't really think I was going to have to help anybody in this way today. Or whether we're thinking, how do I respond to this rubbish situation that I find myself in when we're actually having to seek help because of a surprising thing that has happened to us. Either way, when things are not what we planned, when we're dealing with the unexpected, we need to stay faithful. We need to stay true to God. We need to simply sometimes deal with what it is that we are faced with. Sometimes we just have to accept and stick with it and trust that God is good. Amen.